Sometimes life gives us lemons. Sometimes it gives us lemonade. Other times it gives us something entirely out of left field that makes us say, WTF. But no matter what obstacles come, there is most often a way out on the other side, and we are once again victorious. My name is Dr. Rowe, and you are listening to my podcast about resilience. Every guest shares a tragedy to triumph story to give listeners like you the inspiration to push through every single day. Listen now as my next guest shares how they were life-jacked.
What do you do when until death do we part turns into we need to part right now? My name is Dr. Rowe, and this is LifeJack, the Resilience Podcast. LifeJack is when an unfortunate or unplanned event happens to jack with your life. My guest for this week, Jade, will share how she survived the emotional pain of a marriage full of infidelity, broken promises, and emotional abuse. Jade is an entrepreneur with a background in social work. She currently supports podcasters by offering editing services and website creation. She is also the host of the Unfiltered podcast by Jade. Listen as she shares about surviving divorce and finding love again. Hi, Jade. Welcome. Thank you so much for being a guest on my show. How are you?
Hi, Dr. Rowe. I'm doing so good. Thank you for having me.
So you were married for 6 years. How did it come to an end?
So there was a lot of infidelity. There was broken trust. And I believe we just saw things differently in terms of what we wanted, how we wanted to go about what we wanted. And I must say that the relationships, it started on a rocky foundation. So that's very imperative to the story, whereas we're from two different demographics. And I thought I was helping as a social worker, in a relationship, helping someone to get to where they need to be or where I think they need to be. And for that, it caused a lot of problems. Even in the marriage, it was always comparing, well, I'm not like what you're used to. And you used to live in this big house, and I didn't live in that big house. It was always comparison and always competing. Well, I'm going to do better than you not because you're uptown means that I can't be like you. And that kept going on for a number of years in the marriage. So it was a lot dealing with, and it coupled with the infidelity and, as I want to say, the last lick in terms of wanting to get back at the person for committing breaking your trust or having an infidelity, and you're trying to get back at the person by doing some other things also. It was just a lot. And then there started to be a lot of resentment that was built up. So it came to an end where I found out again about something else that happened. And I went on the road and came back and could not go into my home because he locked me out.
Wait, he locked you out?
He locked me out of my home, yes.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, continue.
Yes. And with that, I had to get the authorities involved. And that night, I moved. But the thing is, before that, couple months before I said, I'm going to leave. I just need something. And I prayed and I said, God, I need you to open a door for me to leave. Find a way for me to leave. And I guess that was it. I went and couldn't go in my home. And I had to get the police to be able to access my house. And I just took my stuff and left. That's how it came to an end.
I couldn't even imagine. And, because marriage is about a partnership, and to know that you are in a relationship with someone that there's lots of comparisons or that there's competition, that's just crazy to me. So how did you, what made you finally realize, it was time to let go?
I believe I realized I deserved much better. I cannot help someone who didn't want to be helped. And the basis of it is that I also blame myself, or I take some accountability for what I did, because you can never marry someone hoping that they change for how you want them to change. And I think that's what I did. I took someone who was not used to living a certain lifestyle to say, come, there's much better out there. Let's do this together. Let's do it together, when that's not what the person wanted. So for the entire marriage, it was, I'm in your world. I'm doing whatever it is. I was not going to live below a certain standard for myself. So I thought I was helping someone by bringing them up. And let's do this together. Let me show you how this can be done. But that was not what was needed. So I take accountability also for trying to impose my beliefs or how I think should be or how I think people want to elevate themselves. I impose that on someone. I didn't just do so. There was conversation and the person said they want to better themselves. And because that was said, I tended to do that. I also take accountability for that. So that's also when I realized, hey, I can't do this. I'm not Superwoman. I can't help you if you don't want to be helped. And because of this, it has caused so much trauma, so much, unresolved issues between us. And there's back and forth, this comparison. We can't continue doing that. And we can't continue belittling each other. You think you're better than me. You don't want me to do certain things because at a point, he didn't want me to do certain things, talk to certain people anymore. It's just about him because he felt like he wasn't enough for, and I'm going to go to somebody else. So that was also a problem. So, I knew I deserved better, so I decided to leave. Yeah, that's how I knew.
Well, I commend you. It takes a very mature person to also say, I have my side in this as well, and I take accountability for my part. Because most times, right, we blame the other person. Oh, this other person is this, and it's this, and it's this, and it's this. But I commend you because you also have realized, like, I have to take accountability for my part as well. Most times there's a conflict, right? And so that is why people decide the marriage has to dissolve.
Right.
And it seems like there's therapists around everywhere, right? There are marriage therapists, individual therapists, but people have the tough time going to therapy or counseling, or they go to counseling, but one person doesn't want to participate. Why do you think that is?
Because people don't want to air their business. Why should I let someone in that I don't know to come into my business and I tell you everything that's happening? Why should I? That's really the mentality that's behind it, and it's embarrassing. For some people, it's embarrassing. You're going to know everything bad about me. How are you going to look at me? So that's some of the reasons we don't want to, and we believe that if it is that we go to a therapist, something is wrong with us. The truth is something is wrong with us, and we need help. And it's not always something bad. Sometimes we just need to sort out some things, because sometimes we do need a third party to come in and to speak to about issues that we're having so that they can help us navigate best what's best for us. And sometimes we do need that. So those are some of the reasons people don't want to go to therapy. And in my situation, as a social worker, I went to counseling for 5 years, 5 or so years of the marriage, while my spouse didn't want to. And it was the same thing, because why is it that we're doing this? Why are you going to let people know our business? That was the mentality behind it. So that's why some people refuse to go about it that way.
That's so interesting that you say that people don't want to go to a stranger. But oftentimes you find that people do turn to people that they know, and they involve people into the inner workings and problems of their marriage. And there's advice that suggests that you should not involve people in your marriage by talking about your marriage business, especially people who are close to you. So what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so I have 2 thoughts on it. I believe you should have an accountability partner, or you should have a therapist that you go and speak to. I think it's important. It's important for you to not feel alone and suffer alone in something, because sometimes we need clarity, and clarity is with speaking with someone, probably not the spouse, but someone who we can trust. And if you're in a marriage, someone who is also married and has a healthy view on marriage is important. We can't be married and speaking or seeking advice from single people, because sometimes they're not going to be able to give us the best advice in the situation that we're in. I'm not saying all the time, but I'm just saying majority of the time. That's my view. For friends and family, sometimes I don't believe we need to divulge everything, because one thing I've learned is that once friends and family, they find out situations, that person might never be forgiven for it. You might forgive the person and move along. They'll say, nope, they'll have it over the person's head and they'll never forget it. So there are certain things that you don't speak to friends and family about, especially if you know that, listen, they're going to now start talking to the person or making the person feel away or so. Don't do that. But if it is that you must find a professional person to speak to or a married couple, and let your spouse know that I'm going to speak to this person about it. So let them know. So it's nothing new when they find out that you did.
No, I totally agree with that. And so now, as you were going through the divorce, right, because that is an emotional time, your finances take a hit, your emotions take a hit, your mental state takes a hit. So did you have a support system as you were going through that process?
I did. I had 2 counselors. 2, I don't know why, but I had 2 counselors. One for me personally, because there are things I realized that I needed to work on. Yeah, I needed to work on a lot. So I needed a counselor for myself, and then there was a counselor that came in the latter part when the marriage was ending. So I had 2 counselors at the time. The one that came at the ending of the marriage was one who spoke with myself and my ex-husband at that time. And as God had it, we spent a lot of time in counseling. And that is when a lot of truth came out in accordance to, hey, these are some of the things that you started with in the relationship that are causing, it's causing a problem right now. And it wasn't worked on, it wasn't talked about. And if these things were spoken about earlier, you probably would have, dodged all this problem now, but it wasn't. So, yeah, I had 2 counselors dealing with everything at that time.
And I'm glad to hear that you did seek out therapy, and especially in the fact that you are in social work, right? Which, that's part of the licensed practitioners, right? And yes, a lot of times it's been said that, oh, no, because this is what I do for a living, so I can't, go to someone who also does any type of counseling. So
I want to say a counselor cannot help themselves, just like how a doctor can't diagnose or help themselves with hurt. You have to go to someone for help.
And so I know you said you had 2 counselors, and of course that means talk therapy or maybe some type of journaling or exercises they had you do. But what did you do specifically to heal yourself? What was your healing journey like?
So for my healing journey was very revealing. So I had to do a lot of self-reflection about what part did I play in this dissolving of this marriage. What part did I play in terms of, and I'm going to is it okay if I give examples of certain things?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So for some of the self-reflection, some of the things I had to do was to say, okay, what kind of responses did you give when you were upset? I probably was demeaning certain times. I probably raised my voice sometimes. I probably said things to him that I know would have hurt him. So I had to think about it and why I did it. And, you're doing something just to hurt the person. You're not supposed to do things or say things just to hurt someone because they're hurting you. So I had to deal with the fact that I respond that way to things and how I can better myself. In terms of, so I had to learn positive coping methods. So when it is I hear something negative about myself, when it's something is said, because he called me out of my name many times, and I had to learn to not respond by calling him back out of his name and saying things to him that, I shouldn't. I also dealt with, mental health, where anxiety and depression was because I had that. I was depressed for a while. I had a lot of anxieties, which I had to be in the hospital in and out. And I had, it was a relationship loss. No matter how toxic it was bad, but it was still almost like death. Like I'm losing someone who I vowed to spend the rest of my life with. And I've been through all of this with, and now we're going to be no more, basically. And, I had to be self-aware in terms of my feeling, how am I feeling? Yeah, how am I feeling? And use different strategies to say, okay, if I'm angry now, why am I angry? And place it on something instead of just being angry at everything for no reason. Figure out why I'm angry. So I now take time. It has translated no, where I take time for myself. If I'm upset about something, I take time to stop and think about it. What am I upset about? I'm upset because of what they said, or am I upset because it's true? Right? So I have to also do that to make sure I'm not responding negatively to just any and anything. So yeah, self-reflecting, it did a lot for me.
You fell in love again after going through your healing journey. How did you meet your current spouse?
So I was in events, and I had helped someone put on an event in the U.S., and that's where we met, at the event.
So do you believe it was love at first sight?
It was not love at first sight. It was not love at first sight, because at the time I was not looking. I was not interested after what I've been through. I did not want to have anything to do with anybody. I was enjoying living myself single.
Right. Maybe your guards were up, right? Your walls were up.
Yes. Yes.
Well, it could be said that after you are in a toxic relationship, that it can be hard to recognize when you are actually in a healthy relationship. Do you agree with that statement?
I agree with it. I agree with it for many reasons, because we're looking at pattern recognition, we're looking at comparison, we're looking at distrust, we're looking at fear of being vulnerable, and we're looking at emotional scars. We're looking at all of these things. So we may see that, okay, this is good, but yet this person does something just like my ex. We'll always be comparing sometimes, and it becomes so toxic, or we don't want to be vulnerable. I was open before, and I got hurt. I'm not going to be open again with anybody. And the truth is, and I said this to someone recently, when you're divorced and you remarry, it's easier to leave that marriage again, because you have done so the first time. The first one was the hardest to leave. So the mere fact that you have walked away and you have been hurt and you have dealt with it and you have moved on, if you're in something and it no longer suits you, it's easier to get up and leave, because you don't want to be hurt again, and you know how that hurt feels, and you don't want to encounter that anymore. So dealing with all of that, it is hard. So one has to say, when I see the signs, for me especially, when I see certain things and I'm in my mind, I'm trying to compare, I have to say, no, that was this person, this is this person. And sometimes it does good to talk. So when something is done, if I am ready to retreat, I ask, why was this done? And hear tell me why it was done. Explain this to me. And with that explanation, I can say, okay, it's for a positive reason, not for a negative reason. You're not trying to harm me like the other person. So the truth is, with male or female, there's similarities with each. So whether you're with this male or you're with another male, there's going to be some sort of similarities because they're males. Same is opposite and true with a woman. So we have to learn to talk. It's important to talk about these things, to not let it affect. Because if it affects your relationship, you're going to run. And you're just going to be by yourself. So it is easy to not see or recognize that you're in a good relationship or a healthy relationship, but it's there. We just have to work on ourselves continuously.
Share with the listeners, what is, in your opinion, what does a healthy relationship look like?
A healthy relationship for me looks like being able to communicate effectively about feelings, emotions, wants, likes, dislikes, the transparency and being able to communicate for me is healthy, because I was not able to do that before. So being in something that I can do, it looks healthy for me. When there's support, when there is love, there's reassurance, those things for me are healthy relationships. Healthy relationships might be different to others based on what they have been in and what they're expecting and looking for. But what I'm looking for is someone who I can talk to, I can be transparent to, somebody who shows me love, affection, someone who I don't have to be asking, do you love me? For me to know you affirm me, someone who supports me. That's what healthy relationship looks like to me.
I love that. Someone who is reaffirming. That sounds so wonderful. I always say reciprocity. That's all I want. Is,
yes, please. Yes, please.
Yes, yes. All right, so I'm going to shift gears a little bit. So let's talk about, you're a fellow podcaster. I always love talking to podcasters so we can, support each other. Please tell the listeners about your podcast, The Unfiltered by Jade.
So The Unfiltered by Jade is a podcast that entertains, inspires, and educates. We educate people on almost anything. There's nothing that we don't touch on. We're Christian based, and it's just to inform people. That's what The Unfiltered by Jade is about, and we drop every Tuesday. A new podcast comes out every Tuesday. The thing with Unfiltered is that I love to educate people in a space where it don't have to be, like school, or so they can just listen to a podcast and be free and just hear something that's about an hour or 30 minutes or so, and they'll be educated, they'll be edified, they'll learn something new. That's really what Unfiltered by Jade is about.
So how did you decide to get into podcasting? I always love to hear stories about getting into podcasting.
I used to work on the radio when I was in Jamaica. So migrating to the U.S., I decided that, hey, I have certificates and I love to do this. Why not start a podcast? But I didn't. I was invited on other person's podcast beforehand, and they were like, hey, Jade, you have the information that others want to hear, and you have that background in social work where you can use that also to educate others. So why don't you just do something? And that's how The Unfiltered by Jade started.
Love it. Love it.
We're 3 years strong.
Yes. I love it. So what's next for you in your life journey?
Well, I know I'm going to advance in my education achievements, and I want to advance and focus on helping to heal families, couples, families, children. That's the area that I'm in. So I now want to pursue further education, and I'm going to continue with The Unfiltered by Jade. I'm hoping that God leads it a bigger platform where it ought to be. But those are my future goals. Those are my future goals with my journey. And yeah, I just wanna be happy doing things that I love, and this is what I love doing.
Well, I love that you're going to continue to give your gifts to the world, because that's the best thing that we can do, is give our gifts that were given to us by the Almighty to the world and not keep them to ourselves. So in your opinion, what are the best ways to build resilience?
To build resilience? By cultivating a positive mindset where we practice optimism and embrace growth. By having emotional regulations where we identify and we learn to express our emotions in a healthy way. And self-care, exercise, be mindful, deep breathing, avoid stressful situations, and just relaxing. Those are some of the ways I think it's best to rebuild resilience.
Well, Jade, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you. Can you do me a favor and tell everyone how they can listen to your podcast, or if they are a podcaster themselves, how can they contact you for editing services?
Okay. All right. So you can listen to The Unfiltered by Jade on all podcast platforms. And we are also on YouTube, so you can just look for The Unfiltered by Jade, and Jade is with a G, not a J. If persons want editorial services, etc., I'm on Fiverr. You can go to my link tree. Everything is there. My information is there. Whether link tree, whether you want to buy my books, whether it is that you want to contact me for anything, my email is there, theunfilteredbyjade@gmail.com. And my Instagram is there, Unfiltered by Jade. And I am also on LinkedIn as Gloria Adigold. So you can also look for that too.
Any last words of encouragement for the listeners?
Yes. Be true to yourself and love yourself. That's most important. We don't need to seek love from others. We need to get it from ourselves first, because we can't love others, and we can't receive love if we don't know how to love ourselves first and foremost. That's it.
Well, Jay, thank you so much for spending this time with me and sharing your story with my listeners. And I wish you nothing but blessings and abundance. Please take care.
Thank you very much.
You've reached the end of another episode of Life Jacked, the Resilience Podcast. Connect with me at www.lifejackedpodcast.com. Don't forget to sign up to the blog so you won't miss any events or episodes. And every now and then, I'll give away free materials from my guests or from me. Remember to live, love, laugh, learn, and then repeat. See you in the next episode.